I can't tell you how many times I get a shot that I love, but one thing jumps out at me that I just can't live with. When a shot is taken, people often, again, try to get back into the photo, and if your arm is a little bit away from your body, you'll see the natural shape of it. If you press your arm too close to your body, attempting to get back or into the eye of the camera, then your arm can look twice as big. So I justify this by saying I'm making it look as if my arm would be a little bit away from my body, so it's not pressed up against, looking larger, and nobody wants their arms looking bigger unless you're a bodybuilder, most likely. So I'm going to start with Filter Liquify, and I am amazed by the speed and ease of this in PhotoshopCS6. On my last laptop, I only had 2 gigs of RAM, and I think I upgraded it to 4, but Liquify is very memory intensive, and it was incredibly slow for very high-res images. Now, they've radically improved the performance, calling to the GPU, the graphics processing unit, and using my dedicated VRAM, video RAM, to make Liquify faster. In fact, another improvement that's radical is the brush size. It used to have a limit of 1,500 pixels and can now go to 15,000, which would be too big to even see on this image. In fact, I dial it up or down and then move over because before you start to use this tool, you want to get it to a size that's just a little bit bigger than the area you're trying to shrink. So I think around 600 will work. Another power user trick is I can click in the number and hold down my down arrow key or hit my down arrow key to quietly nudge it or subtly nudge it down. The default mode for Liquify is forward warp. I'm going to use Pucker, which I call the liposuction tool. Pucker will suck away the fat, so I can click. And when you click, you need to make small, subtle clicks, because basically Photoshop is pulling your image towards the plus sign around the radial brush. So I'm making my arms not look like the latest bodybuilder by subtly clicking to shrink. I have to be careful here along the back as well that I don't create rippling. It can look curvy. And as most women know, bad undergarments can cause odd back ripples, which nobody wants to see back fat. So Photoshop will be your key for helping with a lot of this. It's very easy to go too far, and while I've made the top of the arm smaller, the elbow is now a bit out of proportion. So you do want to work your way all the way up the arm, but do not do this. Do not click and drag. Clicking and dragging, especially in earlier versions of Photoshop, will suck everything in like it's going down a black hole. It will be very fast. In fact, I'm so trained and afraid to do that, I'll undo. In CS6, it's a lot easier. Clicking and dragging isn't making as pronounced a move. Now, part of that will be your settings for the Liquify tools. In fact, I'm not in advanced mode where I can get to more details. I don't need that for this example. I'm simply going to keep liquefying until the arm is balanced most of the way up. My wrists always look good. They're very thin. It's the arm you throw against the body that's usually offensive to me. And even though this might look like a muscle line, to me it only looks like fat. So I will do some more cleanup after I click OK. If you want a thinner waist, Liquify is also great at that. So I can pull the waist in a bit. Now you'll notice as I pull in, this is starting to ripple. I'll go back to forward warp, and I can use that to basically push the pixels down so I'm not getting a gap there showing evidence of my retouching. My goal is to make things look better, but remain natural looking. There we go. And sometimes I even want to push this out, so you have a bloat tool. Bloat would make that band wider if you want more of the black to show. Finally, I have a little bit of a double chin going on there. After having children, that will happen, at least for the first month or two. So I can use the pucker or liposuction tool on my chin. And if you're very curious, sometimes just for fun, I'll set the brush size to 200 and see what I would look like with a nose job, just a smaller nose. I don't love that, so we'll repair it later, and you can undo here. Control-Alt-Z or Command-Option-Z is your multiple undo command. I could finally use forward warp to push a little bit of that double chin away. It will look odd, but I'm going to use history to restore parts that basically got destroyed in my attempt to make the image better overall. I'll click OK, and I love to do this. Control-Z or Command-Z, before, after, before, after. The face got really out of whack. The arm looks better, although not perfect yet, but we'll finish off the rest. So in history, which I live for, it just saves me so much correction time. In the History panel, which you can get through Window History if you don't have it up, I can take a snapshot of what liquefy looks like, because I may need it to blend the skinnying work I did with the original shot. In this case specifically, I want to bring back my original chin, just not leave the double chin portion. So my history brush defaults to the original file, what it looked like when I opened the image. You can hit the letter Y on your keyboard for history, or you can click the history brush. And I'm zooming in with Control plus or Command plus and using my spacebar to move my screen around. And I will simply paint back where the chin was. Now you could see it was much bigger. So I can decide to undo that, or Control-Alt-Z, Command-Option-Z to multiple undo, and use a harder brush, like a 95, that's a little bit smaller, and I'm estimating looking at the chin. Here, I'll bring back all of the original mouth and nose, because I'm happy with those. Don't want to change my overall features. And at the 95, it's not doing enough blending, so I could dial that down to somewhere around 80, and you could see the softness of the brush. Now, I'm blending back my real chin without the double chin portion, using the left bracket on my keyboard to make the brush bigger or smaller. And here I have to make a decision. Do I want to bring back everything, Shift-click, or do I want to undo with Control-Alt-Z and just bring back a portion? Command-Option-Z is your multiple undo for the Mac users. So I'm going to decide on my own how much of this chin to paint back. You make the call with your own images. And I could use cloning stamp to clean up anything I don't like. Here I'm getting some color shift, so now I'll set my hardness to 0, and it will blend better, hitting my right bracket to make a nice big brush. There. I might even have a little bit of halo in the original shot. The way I can check is through history, before, after. Yes, this was a little out of focus. I thought it was something I was bringing in by painting with history. It was not. Now let's finish this up. I'm happy with mostly everything else except for this crease in my arm. So we'll go to my favorite patch tool to select this area, pick it up, and drag to new skin. I'm trying not to get this crease here, and if I want to get rid of those moles, I can. With the patch, I just click and drag, and Photoshop constantly blends for me. So I use patch to hide a lot of evidence. In fact, if I think this looks like a little bit of fat where the texture of the skin is uneven, I simply click and drag, and patch will blend it away. So let's get a final look at our composition. I always do Command 0 or Control 0 to fit in window. That way I can see, rather than being zoomed in, my work. So this way I get an overview. Now I will click on my first shot, before, scroll down, click on my last shot, after. And I didn't end up using this second snapshot, the one after liquefy, but if I had gone to my history brush and painted too much of the chin back, like this, I could click to the left of snapshot 1 to make that the source, and now paint in the repair, blending each. If I don't want that little crease, click to the left of the original, blend. So I'm just constantly going back and forth between the skinnied version and the original version. I hope you've enjoyed our tour of Liquify and how you can use history to blend the original pieces with your corrected final product.